Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Un's Harmony, watching the stars move past the viewing screen. The ship had been traveling through space for 3 days now, heading toward the outer colonies. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been captain of this ship for 5 years. "Captain, we're getting a signal," said Amy Turner from her seat at the communication station. Amy was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and quick fingers that danced over her controls. "It's a distress call." Jake walked over to her station. "Where is it coming from?" "The Kepler 442 system, sir. About 2 hours away at full speed." Amy looked up at him with worried eyes. "The signal is weak." "Whoever sent it might not have much time." Jake nodded. In space, distress calls were taken seriously. Too many ships had been lost in the dark between stars. "Set course for Kepler 442, full speed." Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her science station. She was a smart woman in her 40s, with long black hair tied back in a neat ponytail. "Captain, I'm not reading any human ships in that area. The signal pattern is ... different." "Different how?" Jake asked. Lisa frowned at her screen. "The frequency is unlike anything in our databases. This might be first contact with a new species." The bridge went quiet. First contact was always dangerous. Some alien species were friendly, like the bird-like Altarians or the peaceful Corvani. Others were not so kind. Jake had heard stories from other captains about species that shot first and asked questions later. "Ryan, what's our weapons status?" Jake asked. Ryan Brooks, a tactical officer, was a big man with strong arms and a serious face. He had served in the Earth Defense Force before joining the diplomatic corps. "All systems are ready, Captain. But if this is first contact, we should be careful. Our orders are to be peaceful unless attacked." Jake sat down in his captain's chair. The leather was worn from years of use. "Amy, try to contact them. Use the standard peaceful greeting protocols." Amy's fingers moved over her controls. She sent out signals in 12 different languages, including the common galactic tongue that most species understood. For 10 minutes, they heard nothing back. Then her station beeped. "I'm getting a response, Captain. They're trying to speak English." The voice that came through the speakers was strange. It sounded like wind blowing through crystal. "Caves. Human ship ... please. We need help. Our engines ... They are broken. We will die if you do not come." Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was already studying the signal, trying to learn more about whoever was sending it. Ryan had his hand near the weapon controls, ready for trouble. Amy was adjusting the signal to make it clearer. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Uns Harmony," Jake said into his microphone. "We're coming to help you. Stay calm." 2 hours later, the Harmony dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a damaged alien ship. The vessel was beautiful in a strange way. It looked like it was made of glass and metal, twisted together, with parts that seemed to glow with their own light. But one whole section was dark and broken. "That's definitely not human technology," Lisa said, studying her readings. "The ship is about the same size as ours, but the power systems are completely different. And Captain ... there are life signs aboard. 23 beings." Jake stood up. "Prepare a rescue team. Ryan, you're with me. Lisa, Amy, you too. We'll take medical supplies and repair equipment." The 4 humans put on their spacesuits and crossed to the alien ship through a connecting tube. The inside of the alien vessel was as strange as the outside. The walls seemed to be made of smooth stone that glowed softly. The air was breathable, but it smelled like flowers and rain. They found the aliens in what looked like their bridge. Jake had seen many different species in his years with the diplomatic corps, but these beings were unlike any he had met. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of tiny crystals. Their eyes were large and silver, and when they moved, they seemed to flow like water. One of them stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was the same crystal wind sound they had heard on the radio. "I am Kethvar, ambassador of the Zephyrian people. You have saved our lives." Jake removed his helmet. "I'm Captain Morrison. We're glad we could help." "What happened to your ship?" Kethvar's silver eyes looked sad. "Our main engine failed. We have been drifting for days. Our people tried to fix it, but we do not have the right parts." Lisa was already scanning the damaged engine with her equipment. "I think we can help," she told Jake. "Their technology is different, but the basic principles are the same. Ryan and I can probably get them moving again." For the next 6 hours, the humans worked alongside the Zephyrians to repair the alien ship. The Zephyrians were polite and grateful, bringing the humans food that tasted like honey and telling them stories about their home world. As they worked, Kethvar stayed close to Jake. The alien ambassador asked many questions about Earth and human culture. Most of his questions were normal, about human art, music, and history. But some questions made Jake uncomfortable. "Tell me, Captain Morrison," Kethvar said, as they watched Lisa and Ryan work on the engine. "Your species has been part of the Galactic Council for many years now. Other species speak of humans with ... interest." "Interest?" Jake asked. Kethvar's crystal skin seemed to shimmer. "They say humans are different from other species. That you do not think the same way others do." Jake wasn't sure what to say. Every species is different. That's what makes the galaxy interesting. "Yes, but there is something specific about humans that other species mention." Kethvar moved closer, his silver eyes studying Jake's face. "They say that humans react strangely when faced with impossible situations." Amy looked up from where she was helping with repairs. She had been listening to the conversation. "What do you mean by strangely?" Kethvar turned his attention to her. "Most intelligent species, when they face certain defeat, will surrender or try to negotiate. It is logical. It is how one survives to fight another day." Ryan stopped working and looked at the alien. "But not humans?" "That is what I am curious about," Kethvar said. His voice had changed slightly, becoming more intense. "What is it that humans do when they are truly cornered and have nothing left to lose?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, though he wasn't sure why. There was something about the way Kethvar asked. The question that didn't feel like simple curiosity. Lisa stood up from the engine compartment, wiping her hands on a cloth. "That's a strange question to ask." Kethvar smiled, showing teeth that looked like small diamonds. "My people are researchers, Dr. Grant. We study other species to understand them better. Most races we have encountered follow predictable patterns when facing hopeless situations. But humans ... humans seem to be different." Jake looked at his crew. They all seemed uncomfortable with the question. "I think most humans prefer to avoid hopeless situations altogether," he said finally. "But surely there must be times when avoiding such situations is impossible," Kethvar pressed. "What then? What do humans do when they have no choice but to face certain death or defeat?" Before Jake could answer, Ryan called out from the engine room. "Captain, the repairs are done. Their ship should be able to fly now." Jake felt relieved to change the subject. "Excellent work. Kethvar, you should be able to reach your home world safely now." Kethvar bowed gracefully. "We are forever in your debt, Captain Morrison. The Zephyrian people will remember this kindness." As the humans prepared to return to their own ship, Kethvar spoke again. "Captain, I hope you will forgive my curious questions. It is simply that my people find humans ... fascinating. Perhaps one day we will learn the answer to my question." Jake paused at the airlock. Let's hope that day never comes, Ambassador. Some questions are better left unanswered. As the Harmony pulled away from the Zephyrian ship, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. Kethver's question about what humans do, when cornered, kept echoing in his mind. Amy was running a final scan of the alien ship. Captain, there's something odd about their engine failure. What do you mean? The damage patterns don't match what? They told us. This looks less like an accident and more like... She paused, checking her readings again. Like they shut down their own engines on purpose. Jake stared at the Zephyrian ship as it disappeared into the distance. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. Amy, send a coded message to Earth Command. Tell them we need to know everything. They can find out about the Zephyrians. He had a bad feeling that Kethver's question wasn't just curiosity. It sounded like the kind of question someone asks when they're planning to find out the answer for themselves. 3 weeks had passed since the encounter with the Zephyrians. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room, reading reports from Earth Command. The information about the Zephyrians was troubling. They were an old species, much older than humans, and they had a history that made Jake's stomach turn. A soft chime told him someone was at his door. Come in. Dr. Lisa Grant entered, carrying a datapad. Her face looked worried. Captain, I've been studying the data we collected from the Zephyrian ship. I found something you need to see. Jake set down his coffee cup. What is it? Lisa sat down across from his desk. Remember how Amy noticed their engine damage looked deliberate? I've been analyzing their ship's computer logs. Jake, they didn't have engine trouble at all. They shut down their engines and sent out that distress call on purpose. Why would they do that? To study us, Lisa said grimly. While we helped. Them, they were scanning our ship, recording our conversations, analyzing our behavior patterns. They weren't stranded, they were hunting. Before Jake could respond, his communicator beeped. Amy's voice came through clearly. Captain to the bridge. We're receiving new orders from command. Jake and Lisa hurried to the bridge. Amy was already pulling up the message on the main screen. Admiral Patricia Stone appeared, her gray uniform crisp and her expression serious. Captain Morrison, you're being assigned to escort duty. A convoy of 3 civilian ships needs safe passage through the Veil Nebula to the Kepler 442 system. Jake frowned. That's the same system where we found the Zephyrians, Admiral. Correct. The convoy is carrying critical medical supplies too. Deal with a plague outbreak on Kepler 442b. They're also transporting families, refugees who are relocating to new colonies in that sector. The Admiral's image flickered slightly as the signal traveled across space. Captain, this mission is important. The medical supplies are the only cure for a disease that's already killed thousands. The families aboard those transports have lost everything and are looking for a new start. Understood, Admiral. When do we depart? The convoy is waiting for you at Beta Station. You'll rendezvous with them in 6 hours. Captain... Be careful out there. The Veil Nebula has been quiet lately. Too quiet. Our scouts haven't reported any problems, but something feels wrong. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Ryan looked up from his tactical station. Captain, escorting civilians through the Veil Nebula won't be easy. The nebula interferes with sensors and communications. If someone wanted to set up an ambush, that would be the perfect place. Jake nodded. The Veil Nebula was a massive cloud of gas and dust that stretched across several star systems. Ships could hide in there for months without being detected. It was also the fastest route to the outer colonies, which is why convoys used it despite the risks. Amy, send a message to the convoy. Tell them we'll be there on schedule. Jake sat down in his captain's chair. Lisa, I want you to prepare detailed scans of the nebula as we travel through it. Ryan, keep our weapons ready but don't be obvious about it. 6 hours later, the Harmony met the convoy at Beta Station. Jake studied the 3 civilian ships on his viewing screen. The largest was the medical transport ship Hope's Dawn, commanded by Captain Elena Rodriguez. Elena was a veteran transport pilot with 20 years of experience running supplies to frontier worlds. The second ship was the colonist transport New Beginnings, carrying 200 families and commanded by Colonel Pete Jackson. Pete was retired military, like many colonist transport captains. His ship was bigger than most passenger vessels because it carried not just people, but all their belongings and the equipment needed to start new settlements. The third ship was the cargo vessel Steady Progress, loaded with construction materials and farming equipment. Its captain was Sophie Martinez, a tough woman who had been hauling cargo through dangerous space for 15 years. Jake opened a communication channel to all 3 ships. This is Captain Morrison of the UN's Harmony. We're here to escort you safely through the Veil Nebula. The journey will take 18 hours. Stay in formation and follow our lead. Elena Rodriguez's voice came back first. Thank you, Captain. We've got medical supplies that can't wait. People are dying on Kepler 442b. Pete Jackson spoke next. My families have been through enough already, Captain. We're counting on you to get us through safely. Sophie Martinez was brief. Ready when you are, Harmony. Let's get this done. The small convoy began its journey toward the Veil Nebula. For the first few hours, everything went smoothly. The ships stayed in tight formation, and Jake's crew monitored space around them, constantly dot as they approached the nebula. The view on the main screen changed dramatically. The Veil Nebula was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Clouds of purple and gold gas swirled like ocean waves, lit up by the light of nearby stars. Lightning jumped between the gas clouds, creating a light show that could be seen from light years away. Entering the nebula now, Amy reported. Communication range is dropping to short distance only. Lisa watched her science station carefully. The gas is interfering with our sensors. I can barely see our own escort ships clearly. Ryan checked his weapon systems. If someone wanted to attack us, they could get pretty close before we spotted them. The convoy moved deeper into the nebula. The beautiful gas clouds began to feel more like a trap than a wonder of nature. Jake found himself thinking about his conversation with Kethver. The Zephyrian's question about what humans do when cornered kept coming back to him. They had been traveling through the nebula for 8 hours when Amy's station started beeping rapidly. Captain, I'm picking up multiple contacts. Ships moving toward us from different directions. Jake's blood went cold. How many? I count 12 ships, sir. They're big ones, cruiser class at least. Amy's voice was tight with worry. They're surrounding us. Ryan was already at his weapons console. Captain, we're seriously outnumbered. 12-1 odds, and we have 3 civilian ships to protect. Before Jake could give orders, his communication system activated on its own. The main screen flickered to life, showing a familiar crystal face. Kethvar appeared, but he looked different now. His silver eyes were cold, and his diamond teeth showed in what might have been a smile. Captain Morrison, Kethvar said, his crystal voice now sounding like breaking glass. How pleasant to see you again. Jake stood up slowly. Kethvar, I take it your engine problems were fixed? Oh yes, our engines work perfectly. They always did. Kethvar moved closer to his own screen. We have been waiting for you, Captain. Waiting and preparing. Preparing for what? Kethvar's image was joined by tactical displays showing the 12 Zephyrian ships surrounding the human convoy. Each ship was larger than the Harmony, and they all had their weapons pointed at the human vessels. For answers, Captain Morrison. You see, my people have a very practical approach to galactic politics. Before we expand into new territory, we study the species that live there. We learn their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, we learn how they react under pressure. Lisa moved to stand beside Jake. You're talking about conquest. Such an ugly word, Dr. Grant. We prefer to think of it as natural expansion. For 1,000 years, we have been growing our territory this way. We study a species, we test them, and then we take what we need from them. Amy looked up from her station. Captain, the civilian ships are asking for orders. They can see the Zephyrian ships on their scanners. Jake kept his eyes on Kethver. What do you want? The same thing I wanted when we first met, Captain. An answer to my question. Kethvar's crystal skin seemed to glow brighter. What do humans do when they are truly cornered and have nothing left to lose? Ryan's hands moved to his weapon controls. Captain, they have us completely surrounded. Our chances of fighting our way out are less than 8%. Kethver had heard Ryan's comment. Your tactical officer is correct, Captain. You have 3 choices. First, you can surrender your convoy to us. We will take the ships and cargo, but we will allow your crew to leave in your ship unharmed. Jake felt anger building in his chest. And the second choice? You can try to fight us. Your ship against 12 of ours, while protecting 3 slow civilian vessels in a nebula that limits your movement. I think we both know how that would. And the third choice? Kethver's smile grew wider. You can try to run. But we know these nebula currents better than you do, and your civilian ships are too slow to escape us. The bridge was silent, except for the sound of electronics humming. Jake looked at his crew. Amy was monitoring distress calls from the civilian ships. Lisa was running calculations on her screen, trying to find some way out. Ryan was studying the tactical situation, looking for any advantage they might have. Jake thought about the people aboard the convoy ships. Elena Rodriguez and her medical supplies that could save thousands of lives. Pete Jackson and the 200 families who had lost everything and were looking for a new home. Sophie Martinez and her cargo of equipment needed to build new colonies. You're asking me to abandon innocent people, Jake said finally. I am asking you to be logical, Captain. Your people value logic, do they not? You cannot save them by dying with them. Surrender, and at least some will live. Jake's communicator crackled, with incoming messages from the convoy ships. Elena Rodriguez's voice came through first. Harmony. Jake Morrison ended the transmission with Kethvar and immediately called for an emergency meeting. The senior staff gathered in the small conference room behind the bridge. Through the porthole window, they could see the swirling gas clouds of the Veil Nebula, beautiful and deadly. Situation report, Jake said as he sat down. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. Ryan Brooks pulled up tactical displays on the conference room screen. 12 Zephyrian heavy cruisers, positioned around us in a perfect sphere. Each ship is about 50% larger than the Harmony, with better weapons and shields. Lisa Grant added her analysis. I've been studying their formation. They're professionals. This isn't their first ambush. The spacing between their ships prevents us from using the nebula gas to hide our movements. Amy Turner looked up from her datapad. I've been monitoring communications from the convoy ships. Captain Rodriguez on the Hope's Dawn is asking if she should jettison her medical cargo to make her ship faster. The colonist families on New Beginnings are recording goodbye messages to relatives back on Earth. Jake felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. 200 families, including children. Medical supplies that could save thousands of lives. 3 crews of good people who trusted him to get them home safely. Options? He asked. Ryan shook his head grimly. Fighting our way out gives us less than an 8% chance of success. The civilian ships are too slow, and lightly armed to help much in a battle. What about negotiating? Lisa suggested. Maybe we can offer them something else they want. Amy checked her communications log. I tried scanning their previous conversations with other species. The Zephyrians don't negotiate, Dr. Grant. They study a species until they understand their breaking point, then they take what they want. Jake stood up and walked to the porthole. Outside, he could see the lights of the three convoy ships staying close to the Harmony. He thought about the people aboard those ships, families who had already lost their homes, doctors carrying medicine to save lives, crews who were just trying to do their jobs. There's something else, Amy said quietly. I've been analyzing the Zephyrian communication patterns. This isn't just about taking our cargo or testing human responses. They're broadcasting everything to other Zephyrian ships. What do you mean? Jake asked. This is a show, Captain. Other Zephyrian fleets are watching to see how we react. If we surrender, it proves to them that humans can be intimidated. If we run, it shows we're cowards. Either way, they'll use the information to plan attacks on other human colonies. Lisa's face went pale. So even if we save these three ships by surrendering, we do other humans later. Jake sat back down heavily. He had commanded ships for 15 years, but he had never faced a choice like this. Every option seemed to lead to disaster. His communicator beeped. Elena Rodriguez's voice came through, calm despite the circumstances. Captain Morrison, this is Hope's Dawn. We need to talk. Jake activated the conference room's communication system. Go ahead, Captain Rodriguez. Sir, I've been talking with the other ship captains. We know the situation. We can see the Zephyrian ships on our scanners. Alana's voice was steady. Captain, these medical supplies I'm carrying, they're the only cure for the plague on Kepler 442b. If I don't deliver them, 15,000 people will die. Pete Jackson's voice joined the conversation. Morrison, this is new beginnings. The families on my ship have already lost everything once. They're not going to run again. These people want to fight. Sophie Martinez spoke last. Steady progress. Here, Captain, my cargo hold is full of mining equipment. Some of it could be used as weapons if we need to improvise. Jake looked at his senior staff. They were all listening to the voices of the convoy captains with expressions of amazement and worry. Are you all saying what I think you're saying? Jake asked. Elena answered first. We're saying we won't surrender, Captain. These supplies have to reach their destination. The families aboard Pete's ship deserve a chance at their new lives. And if the Zephyrians think they can intimidate humans by threatening us, they need to learn they're wrong. Pete's voice was firm. Captain Morrison, I've got 60 retired military personnel among my colonists. They weren't planning to fight today, but they're ready if needed. We've been talking it over, and we agree. Some things are worth fighting. 4, Sophie added. My crew has been modifying our mining equipment. We might not have military weapons, but we've got other options. Jake felt something change in the room. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, determination. He looked at his crew and saw the same thing in their faces. Ryan, what are our chances if the convoy ships actually help in the fight? Ryan worked at his calculator for a moment. Still not good, Captain. Maybe 15% instead of 8. But he paused, thinking. If we coordinate properly, if we use the nebula to our advantage, if we're willing to take serious risks, maybe we could surprise them. Lisa was studying her science station readouts. The nebula gas is highly charged. If we could create an electrical discharge between the gas clouds, it might interfere with their sensors temporarily. Amy looked up from her communications panel. Captain, I'm getting reports from the civilian ships. They're not acting like victims anymore. Hope's Dawn is rerouting power to strengthen her shields. New Beginnings is organizing her passengers for damage control. Steady Progress is preparing her mining charges for combat use. Jake felt a strange calm settling over him. For the first time since the Zephyrians had appeared, he wasn't thinking about odds or tactics or survival. He was thinking about the 15,000 people who would die without Delana's medical supplies. He was thinking about the families who had already lost one home and deserved a chance to build another. He was thinking about the principle that some things were worth defending, even when the odds were impossible. "Amy, open a channel to all ships in the convoy," Jake said. When the channel was open, Jake stood up. "This is Captain Morrison. I want everyone to listen carefully. We're facing overwhelming odds. Most of us probably won't survive the next few hours. But I want you all to know something. What we're doing here matters." He paused, looking out at the gas clouds where the Zephyrian ships waited. The Zephyrians think they understand humans. They've studied other species, learned their breaking points, used that knowledge to conquer them. They want to know what humans do when we're cornered with nothing left to lose. Jake's voice grew stronger. "Well, here's what humans do. We don't surrender when innocent people need our help. We don't run when we have a job to finish. And we don't let bullies win just because they're bigger than us." Elena Rodriguez responded first. "Harmony, this is Hope's Dawn. We're ready." Pete Jackson was next. "New Beginnings standing by. The families want you to know they're proud to serve alongside you." Sophie Martinez kept it simple. "Steady Progress ready for action, Captain." Jake looked at his crew. Ryan was already working on battle plans. Lisa was preparing to use the nebula's properties as a weapon. Amy was coordinating communications between all 4 ships. "One more thing," Jake said over the open channel. "The Zephyrians are broadcasting this fight to their other fleets. They want to see how humans react under pressure. Let's make sure they get a good show." Jake sat down in his captain's chair and opened a direct channel to Kethvar. The Zephyrians' crystal face appeared on the screen, still showing that cold smile. "Have you made your decision, Captain Morrison?" "Yes, Ambassador, we have." And Jake looked directly into Kethvar's silver eyes. "You asked what humans do when we're cornered with nothing left to lose. Here's your answer. We fight." Kethvar's smile faded slightly. "Captain, you cannot win. Surely even humans can understand basic mathematics." "Maybe we can't win," Jake admitted, "but we can make sure you pay a price for victory. And we can make sure every other species in the galaxy sees exactly what it costs to threaten human civilians." The Zephyrian ambassador's crystal skin seemed dim. "You would sacrifice your lives for strangers?" "Not for strangers," Jake corrected. "For people who need our help. For families looking for a new home. For the principle that some things are more important than survival." Jake stood up and walked closer to the screen. "You've been studying humans, Kethvar, but you missed the most important thing about us. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for each other." Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and for the first time, his voice sounded uncertain. "This is not logical, Captain." "No," Jake agreed. "It's not logical at all. But it's human." Jake cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All right, people. They want to know what cornered humans do. Let's show them." Ryan brought up the tactical display. "Captain, I have a plan. It's crazy, and it probably won't work, but it might give us a chance. Let's hear it. We use the civilian ships as bait, while the Harmony creates a distraction. If we can get the Zephyrians to break formation, we might be able to pick them off one at a time." Lisa nodded. "I can create electrical feedback in the nebula gas. It won't last long, but it might blind their sensors for a few minutes." Amy checked her communications panel. "The convoy ships are ready, Captain." Captain Rodriguez says she's prepared to use her ship as a ram if necessary. Colonel Jackson has armed his civilians with mining. The battle began with silence. For 30 seconds, nothing moved in the Veil Nebula except the swirling gas clouds. The human convoy stayed in tight formation, while the 12 Zephyrian ships held their positions like hunters, waiting for prey. To run dot, then Jake Morrison gave the order that changed everything. Execute. The Un's harmony suddenly accelerated toward the nearest group of Zephyrian ships, all weapons firing. At the same time, Dr. Lisa Grant triggered her electrical charge in the nebula gas. Lightning jumped between the purple and gold clouds, creating a brilliant light show that temporarily blinded every sensor in the area. The Zephyrians had expected the humans to either surrender or try to run. They had not expected them to attack. Direct hit on the lead Zephyrian cruiser, Ryan Brooks reported from his tactical station. Their shields are down to 60%. But the harmony was just the distraction. While the Zephyrians focused their attention on Jake's ship, the 3 civilian vessels put their own plan into action. Captain Elena Rodriguez pushed the Hope's Dawn to maximum speed and rammed directly into the side of the Zephyrian cruiser. The medical transport ship was smaller and lighter than the alien vessel, but the impact at full speed crushed the enemy ship's engine section. Both ships tumbled through the nebula gas, locked together in a deadly embrace. "Elena, report," Jake shouted into his communicator. Rodriguez's voice came back, strained but determined. "Hull breach on deck 3, but we're still fighting. The Zephyrian ship is dead in space. 1 down, Captain." At the same time, Colonel Pete Jackson was coordinating his own attack from the New Beginnings. His colonist transport wasn't built for combat, but it was carrying 200 people who had nothing left to lose. Jackson had distributed mining equipment, tools, and emergency supplies to his passengers, turning them into an improvised fighting force. "Zephyrian boarding party detected," Jackson reported. "They're trying to cut through our hull. All passengers, prepare to repel boarders." The aliens who broke into the New Beginnings expected to find terrified civilians. Instead, they found angry humans armed with welding torches, mining drills, and industrial cutting tools. The Zephyrian soldiers were trained fighters, but they had never faced an enemy that included grandmothers wielding plasma cutters and teenagers throwing mining charges. Captain Sophie Martinez had turned her cargo ship into something even more dangerous. She had rigged her mining explosives to create a massive bomb, then steered the Steady Progress directly toward the largest group of Zephyrian ships. "Sophie, what are you doing?" Jake demanded. Martinez's voice was calm over the radio. "My job, Captain, getting this cargo delivered." She detonated her improvised weapon just as 3 Zephyrian cruisers moved to surround her. The explosion lit up the entire nebula section like a new star being born. When the light faded, all 3 enemy ships were gone, and the Steady Progress was an expanding cloud of debris. Jake felt his heart break as Sophie's ship disappeared, but there was no time to mourn. The battle was far from over. "Ryan, status." "Report. We've taken out 4 Zephyrian ships, but we've lost the Steady Progress. The Hope's Dawn is badly damaged, but still fighting. New Beginnings has repelled the boarding party, but has hull breaches on 3 decks. The Harmony shook as enemy weapons hit their shields." Jake gripped his captain's chair as sparks flew from damaged control panels. "How many Zephyrian ships are left?" 8, Captain, and they're angry." On the main screen, Cuthbert's face appeared again. The Zephyrian ambassador no longer looked calm and confident. His crystal skin was flickering with colors that Jake had never seen before, and his silver eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. "This is impossible," Cuthbert said, his voice crackling with static from the nebula interference. "You cannot win. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Jake wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. You're right, Ambassador. We can't win. But we're not trying to win. We're trying to make sure you lose. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, Jake replied. You asked what humans do when we're cornered. We make sure that cornering us costs more than you can afford to pay. Amy Turner looked up from her communications station. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from Elena Rodriguez. Elena's voice came through the speakers, weak but determined. Morrison, this is Hope's Dawn. My ship is finished, but my medical cargo is intact. I'm transferring it to escape pods and launching them toward Kepler 442b. The automated systems will get the medicine to the planet. Elena, what about you and your crew? We're staying with the ship, Captain. Someone needs to make sure these escape pods get away safely. There was a pause. Tell the families on Kepler 442b that the medicine is coming. Tell them we kept our promise. Jake watched on his tactical display as dozens of small escape pods launched from the dying Hope's Dawn. Elena Rodriguez had turned her ship into a shield, protecting the medical supplies with her own life. Pete Jackson's voice came over. The radio next. Morrison, this is New Beginnings. We've sealed the hull breaches, but our engines are damaged. We're not going anywhere fast. Can you still fight? Captain, I've got 200 people on this ship who have already lost one home. They're not going to lose another without a fight. We've got mining charges rigged as missiles and every piece of metal on the ship turned into weapons. The Zephyrians want a fight? We'll give them one they'll never forget. The New Beginnings began firing improvised weapons at the nearest Zephyrian ships. Mining charges designed to break rocks were being used as missiles. Industrial tools were jury-rigged into energy weapons. The colonist families worked together like a well-trained military unit, turning their transport ship into a fortress. Meanwhile, the Harmony continued its desperate battle against impossible odds. Ryan Brooks had turned the ship's navigation system into a weapon, using the nebulous gas clouds to hide their movements and set up surprise attacks. Lisa Grant was creating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted Zephyrian targeting systems. Amy Turner was coordinating between all the human ships while also jamming enemy communications. Another Zephyrian ship down, Ryan reported as they watched an enemy cruiser break apart under the Harmony's weapons. That makes 5 destroyed. But the human ships were paying a terrible price. The Hope's Dawn was dead in space, kept alive only by emergency power. The New Beginnings was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. The Harmony's shields were failing, and half their weapon systems were offline. Captain, Amy said quietly, I'm picking up new contacts on long range. Sensors. More Zephyrian ships heading this way. Jake's heart sank. How many? At least 20. They'll be here in 1 hour. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all injured and exhausted, but none of them looked ready to give up. He thought about Elena Rodriguez, who had died making sure medical supplies reached people who needed them. He thought about Sophie Martinez, who had turned her cargo ship into a weapon to protect others. He thought about the families aboard New Beginnings who were fighting with mining tools because they refused to be victims again. All ships. This is Captain Morrison, Jake said over the open channel. Reinforcements are coming, but not 4. U.S., we have maybe an hour before more Zephyrian ships arrive. Pete Jackson responded immediately. What are your orders, Captain? Jake stood up, ignoring the pain from his injuries. We finish this. We make sure the galaxy knows what happens when you threaten human civilians. We make sure no other species ever asks what humans do when we're cornered. The final phase of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The remaining human ships attacked with a desperation and creativity that amazed even their enemies. The Harmony used its damaged hull as a battering ram. The New Beginnings launched every piece of equipment it had as improvised missiles. Dying Hope's Dawn used its last power to create a massive electromagnetic pulse that disabled two Zephyrian ships at once. The Zephyrians had superior technology, better weapons, and more ships. But they had never fought an enemy that simply refused to stop fighting. Every time they destroyed a human weapon, the humans found another one. Every time they thought the battle was over, the humans found a way to keep going. Kethvar appeared on the communication screen one last time. His crystal skin was now completely colorless, and his voice shook with fear and confusion. "Stop this madness, Captain Morrison. You have already lost. Your ships are destroyed. Your people are dying. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." Jake looked at the Zephyrian ambassador through the smoke filling his bridge. "You still don't understand, do you, Kethvar? We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to make sure you remember. This day for the rest of your lives." "Why?" Kethvar demanded. "Why throw away your lives for nothing?" "Not for nothing," Jake replied. "For the principle that some things are worth defending. For the idea that bullies don't get to win just because they're stronger. For the people who will come after us." Jake turned to Ryan. "Do we have enough power for one more attack?" Ryan checked his displays. "Barely, Captain. But if we overload our engines, we can ram their command ship." Jake nodded. "Amy, send a message to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them how Elena Rodriguez died, protecting medical supplies. Tell them how Sophie Martinez turned her cargo ship into a weapon. Tell them how the families on knew." 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Veil Nebula. Captain Jake Morrison now served as an admiral in Earth's diplomatic fleet, but he still remembered that day with perfect clarity. He remembered Elena Rodriguez ramming her medical transport into an enemy cruiser. He remembered Sophie Martinez turning her cargo ship into a bomb. He remembered the families aboard New Beginnings fighting with mining tools because they refused to be victims. Today, Admiral Morrison sat in the observation deck of Unity Station, the galaxy's largest diplomatic facility. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station. Humans now held positions of respect throughout the Galactic Council, and their colonies were expanding faster than ever before. The reason for this change could be traced back to a single question that an alien ambassador had asked in the depths of a nebula. What do humans do when they are truly cornered and have nothing left to lose? The answer to that question had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Ambassador Linda Walsh walked into the observation deck, carrying a datapad with the day's meeting schedule. Linda was Jake's replacement in the diplomatic corps, a smart woman in her 40s who had earned her position through years of successful negotiations with alien species. "Admiral, the trade negotiations with the Corvani Empire are about to begin," Linda said. "Are you ready?" Jake stood up from his chair. The Corvani were bird-like creatures known for their aggressive business practices and territorial disputes. Today's meeting was supposed to settle a disagreement over mining rights in the Tau Ceti system. "Any problems expected?" Jake asked as they walked toward the main conference room. "The Corvani have been making threats about using military force. If they don't get the mining concessions they want," Linda replied. "Their ambassador seems to think humans will back down if pressured." Jake smiled grimly. "Then they haven't heard about what happened in the Veil Nebula." The conference room was large and circular, with delegates from 12 different species seated around a curved table. The human delegation sat across from the Corvani representatives, who looked like large eagles with golden feathers and sharp beaks. Ambassador Krektar, the Corvani leader, was already speaking when Jake and Linda entered the room. The bird-like alien's voice was harsh and aggressive. "The Corvani Empire has ancestral claims to the Tau Ceti system. Crichter declared, spreading his wings for emphasis. We demand exclusive mining rights to all asteroids in that region. Any human settlements there must be relocated immediately. Linda took her seat calmly. Ambassador Krektar, human colonists have been living in the Tau Ceti system for 15 years. They have established homes, farms, and families there. We cannot simply relocate entire communities because you have decided you want their resources. Krektar's golden eyes flashed with anger. Then perhaps the Corvani Empire needs to remind humanity that we have the larger fleet. Our military forces could easily remove your colonists if necessary. The room went quiet. Threatening military. Action against civilians was considered a serious breach of diplomatic protocol. Several alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Linda was about to respond when another voice spoke up. Ambassador Thelverine of the Altarian Collective, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with large black eyes, raised one hand. Ambassador Krektar, Thelverine said quietly, I would suggest you reconsider your approach to this negotiation. Why? Krektar demanded. The Corvani Empire has every right to use military force to defend our territorial claims. Thelverine's large eyes looked directly at the Corvani ambassador. Because threatening human civilians is not advisable. Nonsense. Humans are just another species. If pressured sufficiently, they will negotiate rather than face military action. Jake watched the exchange with interest. He had worked with Thelverine many times over the years and knew the Altarian to be a careful and thoughtful diplomat. Ambassador, Thelverine said, his voice still quiet but carrying a warning tone. There are some questions that should never be asked, and some answers that should never be learned. Krektar spread his wings wider, a sign of aggression among his species. What are you talking about? What questions? Several other alien delegates were now watching the conversation with obvious concern. A representative of the peaceful Zephyrian refugees, the survivors of Kethvar's species, actually stood up and began moving toward the exit. Thelverine continued speaking, his words carrying the weight of galactic history. 5 years ago, the Zephyrians asked humans what they do when cornered with nothing left to lose. The Zephyrians had 12 heavy cruisers and faced 3 human civilian ships plus 1 escort vessel. So? Krektar asked. Superior numbers should have guaranteed victory. The Zephyrians thought so too, said another delegate, a crystalline being from the Helix Collective. They were wrong. Linda Walsh sat quietly, letting the other species tell the story. This was better than any threat she could make. Thelverine's voice grew more serious. The humans did not surrender. They did not flee. They did not negotiate. Instead, they fought with a desperation and creativity that defied all logical expectations. The Corvani ambassador's feathers ruffled slightly. One battle does not define a species. No, agreed the Helix delegate, but this battle did. The humans turned medical transports into rams. They used mining equipment as weapons. Civilian families fought with tools and improvised explosives. They chose to die fighting rather than abandon their principles. A delegate from the Omega Consortium, a species known for their detailed record-keeping, pulled up a holographic display. The final casualty report from the Veil Nebula engagement. Zephyrian Empire, 8 heavy cruisers destroyed, 4 disabled, remaining ships fled the field. Human forces, 3 civilian vessels heavily damaged, 1 destroyed, 1 military escort vessel crippled but operational. Krektar stared at the numbers. That's impossible. How did 3 civilian ships defeat a professional military force? They didn't defeat them, Thelverine explained. They terrified them. The Zephyrians had never encountered an enemy that would rather die than surrender. The humans showed them something that no mathematical calculation could predict, the willingness to sacrifice everything for principle. The room was completely silent now. Every alien delegate was focused on the conversation. What happened to the Zephyrians? Crater asked quietly. The refugee representative spoke up, her crystal voice sad. My people scattered across the galaxy. Some colonies died out from fear and despair. Others joined different empires as servants rather than conquerors. The Zephyrian Empire, which had existed for 1,000 years, collapsed within 2 years of the Veil Nebula battle. Because of one lost battle? Because the recordings of that battle spread throughout our space, the refugee explained. Our people saw what humans became when cornered. We realized that any species capable of such determination could never be truly conquered. The psychological impact destroyed our will to expand or fight. Jake decided it was time to speak. Ambassador Crater, the Altarian delegate, was giving you good advice. There are questions you don't want to ask humans. Such as what we do when someone threatens our civilians. Such as how far we'll go to protect our homes. Such as what price we're willing to pay to defend our principles. Linda Walsh added her own comment. The colonists in the Tau Ceti system are not just names on a list, Ambassador. They're families who have built lives there. Farmers who have planted crops. Children who consider it their home. Threatening them is not a negotiating tactic. It's a very dangerous mistake. Crater looked around the conference room. Every alien delegate was watching him with expressions that ranged from concern to outright fear. The message was clear. Threatening humans was something that civilized species simply did not do. I withdraw the military threat, Crater said finally. Perhaps we can find a compromise on the mining rights that benefits both our peoples. Linda smiled. That sounds much more reasonable, Ambassador. I'm sure we can work something out. As the negotiations continued in a much more civilized manner, Jake noticed that several alien delegates were quietly sending messages to their home governments. The word would spread quickly. The Corvani had almost made the same mistake as the Zephyrians, and other species had prevented it just in time. After the meeting ended, Thelvarin approached Jake and Linda. Admiral Morrison, Ambassador Walsh, thanked you for your patience during that discussion. Thank you for the intervention, Linda replied. You probably prevented a serious diplomatic incident. Thelvarin's large black eyes were thoughtful. Admiral, may I ask you something? The humans in the Veil Nebula, did they really know they were going to die? Jake considered the question carefully. They knew the odds were impossible. They knew they probably wouldn't survive. But they also knew that some things are more important than survival, such as making sure that medical supplies reach people who need them, such as protecting families who are looking for a new home, such as proving that bullies don't get to win just because they're bigger. Thelvarin was quiet for a moment. My people have studied the recordings from that battle many times. We still do not understand how beings can choose certain death over surrender. Linda answered this time. That's because you're T.